In a time of profound social and cultural change, an entire generation of young Americans stood united in their desire for more powerful cars, fueling the greatest horsepower war in automotive history. Screeching rubber through turns, roaring down back streets and country lanes, were fun-loving drivers in their wild and powerful dream machines. Just about anyone could afford to fly down the road in a boldly styled, attention-grabbing American icon, the muscle car. Hello, I'm Chip Foose, coming to you from Day Family Classic Cars in Corona, California. When you consider the most renowned muscle cars of the 60s and 70s, they run the gamut, from top-selling GTOs and Charger RTs, fairly low-production GSXs and Hemi Cudas, to the exceptionally rare Copo Camaros and Boss 429s. But the big three, some of their dealers and aftermarket partners, saw the promotional potential of limited edition, higher horsepower muscle cars. These specials are often overlooked in the grand sweep of muscle car history, but they're exceptional examples of creative marketing meeting the demand for more power. In the 1960s, when people thought about the big three, most likely the image in their head was of their local dealership. Car dealerships have been the anchors of big cities and small towns alike since the dawn of the automobile age. And in an era before mass media, dealerships were an important source of promotion and advertising. Certain specialty dealerships were also ground zero for the lunatic fringe of performance fanatics.
The factory catered to a very large spectrum of buyers and could satisfy most wants from most consumers back then. But there was always a fringe body of people who wanted more. You know, they wanted performance in excess. And that's what these specialty dealers catered to. Take cars, modify them so there's even more performance than you could buy from the factory. As long as you were willing to pay, they would do anything you wanted.
For these specialty dealerships, performance and promotion went hand in hand. And a close relationship between builder and dealer meant that the real winner was the customer. However, it took time to cultivate such a relationship.
Bunky Knudsen contacted me personally, and he said, "Find a dealer who would like to adopt the performance image, who would like to become the place to call to get performance cars." His name was Ace Wilson Jr. He and his father shared a ownership in a dealership in Royal Oak, Michigan, and they created a car called a Royal Bobcat.
The 1967 Royal Bobcat GTO was a publicist's dream. The name itself came from the improvised badges used for the Royal cars, mashing up letters from Bonneville and Catalina nameplates. This GTO has been heavily modified under the hood, including higher compression, larger carburetor jets, and a variety of other technical modifications. Another car that helped carry the Pontiac promotional flag was the G2 Tiger, a weekend warrior drag racer that capitalized on the public's association of the GTO with both speed and tigers. The G2 seen here is a replica of those cars, and its modern 505 cubic inch power plant makes it a beast in nostalgia drag racing.
I think that the promotion and the imaging of them is what separated the men from the boys, and that's one of the things that Pontiac certainly stood out. I think the GTO itself was extremely well promoted when we took on the use of the name Tiger to the fact that the GTO was a real tiger. You know, all their cars were tigers. All their cars were wild and ferocious and yet beautiful, agile, and the GTO was, of course, at the the apex of that image.
Coming up, muscle cars in their Sunday best.
by 70, 71, you see Detroit involved in a lot of this graphics. Stride packages, spoiler packages, rear louvers, and so they were as concerned about how the car presented aesthetically as they were about how it performed.
For Detroit's Big Three, 1970 represented a crescendo for performance and styling across the classic mid-size muscle car landscape. This was no less true for pony cars, as Ford greeted the new decade with some of the finest Mustangs ever built. The Boss 302, Boss 429, the last year of Shelby Mustangs, and the second year of the Mach 1 upgrade package. Little did anyone suspect that the best was yet to come, as Ford was on the verge of unveiling arguably the most spirited horse in its stable.
Ford was really big into the promotion of the Mach 1 Mustangs. They drag raced them heavily in super stock, and so it was a very high-profile car for Ford, especially in the drag racing circles, and I think that's what the Twister promotion was all about.
Built on special order for Kansas City dealerships by Ford, the Twister Mustang is what big block pony cars dream of when they sleep. Underneath the prominent hood scoop sat Ford's top-of-the-line engine, the 428 Super Cobra Jet.
The difference between the Super Cobra Jet and the regular Mach 1 Cobra Jet is the compression's a little bit higher, cam's slightly different, a little more of a performance horsepower package. They were rated only at 335, but they were a much more high-performance package.
In fact, the output of the Super Cobra Jet has been estimated to exceed 400 horsepower, putting the Twister on firm footing compared to its pony car rivals. And the Twister is no brute machine, but rather a well-appointed, rakishly designed street racer.
But what's interesting about the Twister, by 70, 71, you see Detroit involved in a lot of this graphics. Stride packages, spoiler packages, rear louvers, and so they were as concerned about how the car presented aesthetically as they were about how it performed. It has the sport wheel package. It's center console C6 automatic, fairly loaded car. It was in the mid $4,000 range, the invoice, which was expensive for a muscle car at that time.
It's also one of the rarest Mustangs of the era, with only 96 built, half of them with the Super Cobra Jet.
The Twister Mustang, I think, is one of the high water marks of the Ford Mustang project. Right there with the Boss 429 and the Boss 302.
The high-performance evolution of the Mustang should be no surprise, as Ford, despite being considered a fairly minor player in the muscle car world, produced some powerful cars during the 60s and 70s. One case in point, a car built some 3 years before the Twister, is one that doesn't exactly spring to mind when thinking about muscle cars. The 1967 Fairlane 500 XL. While the Fairlane's image was more mom's grocery getter than street menace, enormous engines had a way of reshaping public opinion. In this case, Ford's fearsome 427 engine originally developed for racing.
These particular intermediate cars built primarily to compete with the Hemis of that era in stock Eliminator. They would be competing against the Belvederes, the GTXs, anything of an intermediate range with Chrysler. In '67, they ran the 427 side oiler. This car is one of 72 500 XLs that has a dual quad R-code 427. It has all of the top-of-the-line pieces that Ford had available for the 427 at that particular time. Medium riser, dual hollies, forged steel crank, 11-to-1 compression.
This burgundy example, the only 67 Fairlane to combine this color with virtually every available option, shows off the car's handsome and very desirable Coke bottle design. It features the optional lift-off fiberglass hood, style steel rims, and of course, horsepower to spare.
I would say this car probably weighs 3,300. At the stock exhaust system on these cars, they're probably a mid-14-second car in this day, maybe 100 miles an hour.
Coming up, a new player joins the game.
It's an amazing car for 1969. Torque monster, fast, out of the hole. It's so ugly, it's cool. It's got these two big hood scoops on it, and it's amazing how fast it is.
The late 60s and early 70s were a simpler time, especially when it came to advertising. Car companies didn't have cable TV, social media, or viral video to promote their product. However, the ad men were very creative when it came to differentiating their muscle cars from the dozens of other models clamoring for the public's attention. By utilizing performance partners, dealerships, and even hand-built specialty cars, the Big Three created some very big buzz for their brands. One of the main beneficiaries of the muscle car era was Hurst Performance, which came to prominence in the 60s, making OEM transmission shifters. Looking for a bigger seat at the table, Hurst partnered with Oldsmobile to create one of the most eye-catching muscle cars of the late 60s, the 1969 Hurst Olds HO 455.
Hurst, I think that was a great publicity stunt. Their own limited special edition Hurst Oldsmobile. And they were wild. Hood scoops, graphics, you're getting into that 69, 70, 71 period that not only is the car going to be fast, you want it to look fast.
They put a 455 in a GMA body, but they did it outside of Oldsmobile production. It went to a place called Demmer Engineering, where theoretically Demmer Engineering did all the modifications, and then the cars from Demmer Engineering went back to Oldsmobile, and they were sold off the dealer showroom floors.
Powered by the same 455 cubic inch V8 that the following year would grace the 442 W30, every 69 Hurst Olds was attired in pure white with Firefrost gold striping. The hood sported twin mailbox scoops, while downforce was provided by an enormous rear airfoil. Turbo hydromatic transmission with console-mounted Hurst dual-gate shifter was standard, as were heavy-duty suspension and 15-inch wheels and tires.
Well, in '69, they decided to make approximately 900, I believe. It was more than a factory tuner. It's an amazing car for 1969. It's an absolutely amazing torque monster, fast, out of the hole. It's so ugly, it's cool. It's got these two big hood scoops on it, and it's amazing how fast it is. And they really did a hell of a job. It's a hell of a lot more than a 442.
Hurst wanted a specialty car that would stand out from the crowd, and they did it.
Even the Big Three needed every bit of publicity they could whip up. In 1970, with the upcoming launch of their new E-bodies, Dodge knew it had to go the extra mile to stand out in a crowded muscle car marketplace. Instead of a performance partnership, the company leaned on its dealership network.
Well, this particular Challenger was built August 2nd, 1969. It was built as a promotion car, loaded with multiple options. It's one of 99 six-pack Challenger convertibles built in '70, but it's one of 6 of the promotion cars. They literally transported these cars all over the country, Dodge did, and put them in dealerships, promotional shows, to promote the new Challenger model that was coming out.
This black-on-red Challenger, one of 4 surviving examples of the promotional cars, is as loaded as they come and includes a blackout hood with pins, white longitudinal stripes, red-on-red interior, and the Super Track Pack.
Dodge loaded this car up, and it has all the eyeballs because, again, they were sending them around the country to promote the new Challenger. So it does overwhelm a little bit the CUDA.
The following year, the venerable Dodge Charger entered its 3rd generation. And whenever a car company completely retools a model, several pilot cars are built by hand to acquaint the production line workers with a refreshed car. This Hemi-equipped Hemi-Orange 71 Charger was one such car, and it served Dodge's promotional needs as a floor model at one of the country's flagship Mopar dealers.
Out of the south side of Chicago was Grand Spalding Dodge. Norm Kraus was the owner. Fascinating individuals. He sold your high-performance Mopar products. Norm would say, yeah, how much money do you want to spend? You know, we can make it go that fast. you can get an engine that's going to run more reliably and develop higher horsepower in a race situation. That is what Grant Spalding Dodge really strove, is to give a customer a vehicle that could win consistently.
Coming up, a speed machine like no other.
Baldwin Motion would build you a 10-second car brand new. The feds didn't like that much, but the public did.
It's impossible to picture the muscle car era without celebrating the high horsepower offerings from Chevrolet. Chevelles and big block Camaros are some of the most iconic muscle cars of all time. For some Chevy dealers and performance shops, the factory's power offerings fell short. Thanks to their perseverance and ingenuity, they created some of the most mind-blowing, badass cars of the era. Production numbers of these specials were low, but today, their desirability is higher than ever. One of the most renowned dealerships of the era was Yanko Chevrolet in Cannonburg, Pennsylvania.
Don Yanko was a world-class, big-time race-winning road racer. And he knew some of the muckety-mucks, the suits at General Motors, and was able to get some huge engines installed from the factory into Camaros, for instance. You could get a factory-built through Yanko automobile that would almost embarrass a standard big block Camaro, for instance. Everybody wants a Yanko in their collection.
Farther up the eastern seaboard in Long Island, New York, an exceedingly profitable partnership between Baldwin Chevrolet and a speed shop called Motion Performance was about to dramatically up the ante on muscle car horsepower.
I approached Baldwin Chevrolet, and fortunately they had a very, very progressive parts manager who was a high-performance guy, and we sold it to the people at Baldwin that owned the dealership. It really gave us an opportunity to do something that was never done, at least in our area.
With Joel Rosen and Motion Performance supplying the power, and Baldwin Chevrolet the credibility, a new breed of muscle car was born.
So it wasn't just Motion Performance, it's now Baldwin Motion Chevrolet. And I think that's critical with a lot of these dealerships, that you just don't want a car that's a speed shop car that you looked at. It had to be affiliated with the dealership.
Packages that we had available where you could buy, starting with just an engine change all the way on up to wheels, tires, stripes, tunnel rams, anything that you want.
This extraordinary white-on-white 1970 Phase 3 454 SS Chevelle is a perfect example of the high-performance Baldwin Motion style. Originally built for racing, the car sports a massive 500-plus horsepower LS7 with open-chamber aluminum heads, aluminum Edelbrock manifold, dual Holley carbs, and an upgraded suspension and instrument panel, along with a Hurst shifter managing the Muncie Rock Crusher M22 4-speed. Like all Baldwin Motion cars, it's a hot-rodded muscle car that's still under warranty and insurable, if only barely. In short, it's the best of both worlds. But like the muscle car era, it couldn't last forever.
Baldwin Motion would build you a 10-second car brand new off the lot. The feds didn't like that much, but the public did. And this is the 1973 Baldwin Motion Camaro. And that's when Baldwin Chevrolet got shut down by the feds. And that's where the Baldwin Motion ends.
At least you can't say Baldwin Motion didn't go out with a bang. This light copper Camaro with white Phase 3 stripes was powered by a Motion upgraded 454 V8 that output an insane 575 horsepower. While the Baldwin Motion partnership didn't survive the end of the muscle car era, today the Motion spirit is still alive, thanks to both legions of fans and the current muscle car revival.
I got to give a lot of credit to GM for bringing back an iconic Camaro, and I've never seen such a domestic vehicle have that kind of fan base and following. and it really energized GM and really brought back the muscle car. If you go back into motion history, the Camaro was the most popular car they modified.
It's the old days all over again, but with a lot more horsepower.
Ironically, as collectible as these cars are today, at the time, people were too busy shredding asphalt to consider how much the car might be worth in 40 years.
Back in this day, we were not as conscious of these cars being special edition, collectible. When you bought these cars, you bought them with an intent of pounding them. I grew up in a collector family. Nobody's talking about we better put this Z28 away. We better put this Hemi Cuda away. No, you threw off the smog stuff. You put headers on it. You maybe even changed the gears to get quicker. Put slicks on it.
The specials of the muscle car era proved that performance and ingenuity extended well beyond the boardroom and staff engineers in Detroit. Thanks to dealerships, aftermarket suppliers, and race shops, muscle cars were able to live up to their fullest potential. Getting behind the wheel of one of these specials is an arm-straightening experience you'll never forget. From Day Family Classic Cars in Corona, California, I'm Chip Foose, and we'll see you next time on American Icon, the muscle car.